there'll be days where you knock it out of the park, and there'll be days where you're eating rhinoceros poop, because it was just such a bad day.
Good morning. Happy Wednesday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand, and it is perfect. Okay. Today is Wednesday. That means that tomorrow is Thursday. So 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, the Coffee and Coaches conference call, as usual, will take place. We've had great groups, great questions, lots of great discussion going on there. I enjoy these calls tremendously, so they will be continuing as long as they are useful. So please join us at 6 a.m. tomorrow. The link will be on my professional Facebook page a little bit before the call at 6 a.m. Got to dig into today's Q&A. We are short on time. So today's call is with Johnny. And we've talked to Johnny before. Johnny's a chiropractic student on his clinical rotations. And so he has some really good questions in regards to some of the principles upon which we want to base our process in regards to how movement arises. And so we talked a little bit about gait and propulsion and how that may apply and under the guise of these physical principles. The conversation sort of evolved into, okay, how does this system interact to find out what people are really good at? How do we see some of these amazing performances in regards to how the system behaves? And then we got into a little bit of the patient interaction as to what we are responsible for as clinicians. And I think that's going to be very useful. So if you know any students or people that want to be students, this is going to be a really, really useful call for you. If you would like to participate in a 15-minute consultation, please go to askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com, put 15-minute consult in the subject line so I don't delete it, and we will arrange one of those at our mutual convenience. Please go to the YouTube page. Don't forget to subscribe to that so you can get access to all of these videos at a moment's notice. And then everybody have a terrific Wednesday. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. on the Coffee and Coaches conference call. Have a great day.
Recording. Clock has started. What is your question, young man?
All right. So you've mentioned before that both sides of, regarding gait in the thorax, that both sides of the thorax are moving forward, one just slower than the other, which makes sense. Right. Now that gone through the fact that the whole body is moving forward in space. But obviously it appears, so like let's use right leg is in stance phase as the example, that the right side of the thorax is moving backwards. It appears that way because the relative movement, the displacement forward is different. So my question is, why is the right side moving slower than the left? Is it because the right side of the body is internally rotating and that slows down time, which slows the rate of loading on the connective tissue? Or you can get that thought, or
yeah. So okay. So this is classical physics. Okay. So as the foot lands on the ground, all right, I have to push into the ground. The ground is pushing back against me. So this is straight up Isaac Newton, third law. Okay. Right. For every action, there's an equal. It's what he's actually talking about. He's talking about conservation of momentum. Okay. That's literally what the third law is conservation of momentum. Right. So as I land with my foot on the ground, I push into the ground pushes back onto me. So what you have is a change in you have a change in velocity, which means that I have, so a change in velocity is acceleration. And so if I have a change in the acceleration, which I do because I'm pushing, right? Gravity pushes down, I push up. Okay. So there's a change in acceleration, which means that, and it's a negative change in acceleration, which means velocity is decreasing. Okay. So velocity is meters per second. Okay. So if I am slowing down by distance, I'm slowly narrowing time. You see it? You see how time gets smaller and smaller and smaller as I get closer and closer to max propulsion. Okay. So when I hit max propulsion, I'm at the big goose egg. I'm at zero, right? There's no time. So literally for a split second, there's no time. Then I have conservation of momentum that creates the expansive strategy that's going in the other direction. That's why I always say that external rotation is where you demonstrate velocity, because that's where you see it, because it's increasing or decreasing.
What is increasing or decreasing?
Velocity.
Okay, gotcha.
So whenever there's a change in the acceleration, there's a change in so acceleration is based on is defined as a change in velocity, right? So if I have a change in the acceleration, so if acceleration is increasing, and it will increase either positively or negatively. So what people call deceleration is just a negative acceleration, right?
Right.
Okay. So that's an increase in acceleration, and so I will see as I have my biggest space, my biggest expansion is where the velocity is demonstrated to be greatest, right?
Okay. Yeah, I need to go through probably the equations and see how time comes into the equation, because also I'm just fascinated by that.
So again, it's meters per second, right? So there's your time. Okay. The space is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So the amount of time, the amount of time that is available for movement is smaller and smaller and smaller. So I'm literally closing the space where I can actually move. So at max P, when I'm pushing maximally into the ground and the ground is pushing up maximally into me, and that's
There's no
second,
space.
there's no space. There's literally no space. What? What's so funny?
Just I guess it's just fascinating to me, and I don't know. It's just usually my reaction when I come to when the light bulb goes off. So
right. So do you remember when you were applying to school and you had to get all your prereqs done, and they said, yeah, we need you to take 2 semesters of physics, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
they never told you why. This is why. This is so you understand why it works this way. But see, now you have to, the important thing to understand is like, okay, so now I'm a human and I have these physical constraints, right? I have a structure, I have behavior, there's fluid mechanics, there's compression, expansion, there is behavior of tissues, etc., right? That all have to follow the same rules because they're fixed. Right? Mm-hmm. Newton kind of figured out most of this stuff, at least on a useful level, right? Some of the stuff he's wrong about, but on a useful level, on an observational level, he's right. So we just have to say, okay, well, if I'm a human being, how do I do this? If I was a worm, how do I do this? Right? And so now you go to school, like your specialized school, and they say, well, here's how these tissues behave in a world that follows these governing laws. If hopefully they did that, right? I mean, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It depends on where you go.
Yeah.
But it's like it's not just to make sure that you're smart enough to get into school. What it was for was to teach you how this behavior applies within a human, right? In this world, in the space around you. And this is why I talk the way I do, because literally you have, if you can conceptualize this stuff, it provides answers to how you do things to enhance some form of behavior, right? So if I need a baseball pitcher to throw a baseball faster, I identify what his capabilities are. And I say, well, if you want to do this faster, you're going to have to be able to do this. And then there's going to be limits. Some people's tissue behavior do not allow them to throw 100 miles an hour. Some people's movement capabilities do not allow them to throw 100 miles an hour. Some people's force production does not allow them to throw 100 miles per hour. That's why that's a very specialized group of humans. Their physical structure predetermined that, the gods smiled upon them and they turned their arm into a thunderbolt, as the saying goes, right? If you watch the right movie, you would understand that. Okay.
I'm not a big movie guy.
All the best lines are
so
taken.
Are there, based on that line of thinking, are there similarities in, so let's say like a pitcher pitchers, there's a similarity in their structure that
Yes.
allows them to do that. Okay.
Right. Okay. There's similarities, but they can do things. They can do things differently. So if I got a guy that's 5'10", 220 pounds, and he's a wide ISA, and I got another guy that's 6'7", 210 pounds, and he's narrow ISA, right? There's certain elements within the throw that have to take place, but how they acquire those positions, how much time they have to produce each element may be different, right? But again, this is why, like you can't take anybody off the street and turn them into anything that they want to be, right? We have to have. Go ahead.
Our parents lied to us. We can't be anything we want to be.
Yes, they did. They didn't. So they were afraid that they were going to hurt your feelings, and so they wanted you, because they were like, "Come on, Johnny, you can do it. Give it the old college try. You can be anything you want as long as you want it bad enough." And that's the biggest lie in the world. You can be great at something that you were meant to be great at. That's the answer. So what you have to do as a human being is you have to discover that. So how do you do that? Well, you expose yourself to a bunch of things, and then eventually you're going to find something that you like. And the reason that you like it is probably because you're good at it. So some people turn into Tony Hawk and they're professional skateboarders. And some people turn into Brandon Woodruff, who can throw 98 miles an hour at a moment's notice. And all of my athletes are like really old people, because I don't pay attention to like the current sports and stuff. And so I think back to like the 70s and 80s. It's like who Tom Brady is arguably one of the better quarterbacks around, right? He's just he's been around longer. The longer you stay, the more records you get to play or get to break. But it's like, no, he was predetermined to being good at certain things. Tom Brady is never going to be a great running quarterback, right? I mean, you can't be a great running quarterback when you run a 5.2 40, right?
Yeah.
But take the cognitive side of it. I think he's probably got that nailed down. He can throw well enough. He can throw well enough, right? Joe Montana was very similar. Joe Montana was not known for having a cannon of a throwing arm, but he was a great quarterback, because talk about somebody that's cool under pressure, right? And a great thinker in stressful situations. So you compensate for certain elements of it. That's what makes certain people really, really good. You could take somebody that has the greatest physical tools. So let's look at Cam Newton, right? Does anybody have better physical tools? Probably not. Okay. Is he the greatest quarterback that's ever lived? No, he has moments of greatness, right? Mm-hmm. But again, it's like you have to look at what do you bring to the table? What are your strengths, right? And then you just have to understand those. And then we apply them to whatever environment that we're working in. We're saying, okay, chances are you're going to be able to do this. And then we'll try to move you towards something that you're really, really good at.
Yeah, and that goes against the common paradigm of just trying to strengthen your weaknesses and to bring up your full.
So people confuse undeveloped potential for strengthening a weakness. Okay. There's a difference. There's a difference. You will never turn a weakness into a strength. You can develop things into its potential, but you can't take a weak, like, okay. So one of my weaknesses, if I was to try to be a professional basketball player, which is totally impossible, right? But if I was to try, one of my weaknesses is that I'm short, right? So I'm like 5'9", 5'10", okay, slightly above average in height. But that's a weakness. It's like, okay, so you're going to tell me, it's like, oh, well, we'll turn your height into a strength. It's like, no, it doesn't happen that way. Like, oh no, we'll keep working on it. We'll get you to 6'5".
Well, if it comes enough, you don't lengthen on it.
Well, theoretically you do, right? Only to a certain point within the constraints of your capability. But you have to look at it from that perspective. It's like, yes, I have undeveloped potentials. That's why you have to expose yourself to a number of things. And you say, you know what, I'm kind of good at this. And therefore, because I'm good at it, I kind of like it. And then I do more of that. And then I develop these things. And so you sort of find those things that you're really, really good at, right?
Yeah, I agree. I want to switch gears kind of to the last call we had. I don't think I framed the question well enough to get a good answer, a good discussion of it. We were talking about not taking credit for when a patient gets better, but
Right.
also feeling, or I guess maintaining responsibility for when they don't. And I feel like those two things kind of contradict each other. And I guess my question is, how do you find that balance of not taking credit when a patient gets better? Because if you don't do that, how can you be responsible if they don't get better? You know what I'm saying?
Okay. So what is your responsibility in the clinician therapist interaction?
Well, it is to help them to help guide the patient to feel better.
That's your responsibility.
And so
You have nothing to do. You have nothing. So, okay. So here you go, Johnny. Patient comes to you and you do something with them and then they feel better afterwards. Okay. Patient comes to you, you do something with them and they feel worse afterwards. Which one do you have responsibility for?
Responsibility for? I mean, I would say both.
No, you can't do anything about it. You don't control the outcome.
But so wasn't it my decision to impose whatever intervention that led to the outcome?
Well, no, you just learned that intervention was not the appropriate one. You were trying to narrow the probabilities as to what would be most effective, and so then the response is, okay, that was not the outcome that we desired. Okay, so I have eliminated that. So you did something. You were successful in determining that something was not the appropriate action at the time. Better or worse is their decision. You don't decide whether they're better or not. That's them. It's not your responsibility. You might be a lousy guide, okay? Right? You might be a lousy guide. That's true. That's true. But whether they get better or worse, what if you do the exact wrong thing and they get better?
Yeah, that's.
Do you have enough clinical experience where somebody came back to you and they did something you thought was like totally wrong, totally off the wall, and then they felt better about it? Happens to me all the time.
I was
right?
say probably. I
Yeah.
don't
Like
remember.
I'll give them an intervention and we have like a nice little, like a really good outcome in the purple room, right? And then they'll go do stuff that I would typically say just probably not a great idea. Based on my experience, based on the probabilities, it's probably a bad idea. So I'm gonna pick on yoga. It's like I have nothing against yoga, but let's just pick on yoga for a second. And they go, yeah, I took a yoga class and I felt so much better. It's like, great, do that.
Right.
Because that wasn't my idea, right? But it made them feel better. So maybe there's a 8% chance that yoga was going to make them feel better and a 92% chance against it, but they fell into that 8% that time. That's the reality. Your responsibility is to evolve yourself into the best possible guide. But ultimately, you don't make them better. You're trying to create an environment that allows them to arrive at the solution. You interact with them. You become entangled with them, right? You're trying to influence them in a favorable way. That's all you can do. The outcome is not your decision.
Is it? And is it even their decision? Conscious of it?
Not really. It's an interaction. It's a number of factors. It is their system that determines the final outcome because it is them, right?
Right.
But think of all the things. And again, this is like an impossible thing that I'm asking here. It's like, but think of all the things that could potentially influence the outcome.
Right.
Really? And you really think it was you? Okay. Maybe. You know,
Yeah.
you can do everything right. You can do everything right.
There's just too many uncontrollable variables.
Yes, sir. Welcome to complexity. This is how you manage complexity and uncertainty, right? You're always going I think I have a good feel for you after 2 or 3 calls here that you're a good human being. You're gonna develop yourself into the best possible clinician that you can be. You want to do right by people, but you don't have that kind of control. I'm sorry. You're not a god.
No. Gotcha.
You know?
No, I appreciate that.
You might have superpowers that we don't know about, but all due respect.
I wouldn't reveal them on camera.
Huh?
I wouldn't reveal those on camera.
Yeah, exactly. But probably a bad idea. People will talk. You'll be judged.
Yeah, that's not good. Right. So is it useful then to try?
I got 2 minutes. Okay,
gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think this will take too terribly long. Is it useful so based on like the complexities to at least learn about as many of the influencing factors
absolutely
and so that you can account for them, so at least hey, this is possibly why my intervention did or did not work. And again, you don't come to a definitive answer, but at least you can appreciate those things.
Right. That's why I'll never take advice from you until you've invested 30 years in practice, because and I'm kidding, of course.
Yeah.
My point is, this is why the experiential element is so powerful for what we do for a living, is because you don't have a broad enough scope of perspective to make the best possible decisions. There'll be days where you knock it out of the park, and there'll be days where you're eating rhinoceros poop, because it was just such a bad day. And by the way, after 30 years, that still happens. No, but it's like you have to evolve. You have to accumulate this perspective. It can't be done. School cannot teach it to you. Experience will teach it to you. You're going to get knocked on your ass a number of times, right? And that's where you're going to learn the most, unless you pay attention to where you're successful as well, and you ask the same questions. When you're successful, you say, what else could I have done? What could I have done that was even better? Because people say, oh, you got a favorable outcome. Well, was it the best possible outcome or just better than what they started with? Right? When people get excited, they say, oh, this guy came in with 0 degrees of hip rotation. We got 10. It's like, okay, are you happy with 10?
Right.
Maybe, like if this guy's like a high level sprinter, 10 degrees of internal rotation is pretty impressive, right? But if it's a regular person that's off the street that needs 40, are you really going to be satisfied with that? Maybe you just need a better perspective, but that might just take some time for you to gather that. Another tool in the toolbox to access a different aspect of the system. This is how you build the clinician. This is why you're on. Are you still on clinicals?
Yeah, I got my last semester this summer of them.
This is why you're on clinicals. It's like, so you capture some real life experience before they say, oh, now you can actually touch people without anybody else in the room. It's like, okay. Right? You're still going to suck.
Yeah.
Because we all suck. We're all terrible at this. Just so you know.
Just stumbling.
We're all terrible. Dude, there's too many unknowns.
Yeah.
You just get better. You narrow the probabilities, right? Just don't get high on your, what is it? Don't get high on your own supply, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
I think Wim Hof actually preaches that, but Wim Hof, the Iceman.
I saw him running in the snow on TV once. I think that's is that the guy?
That's the guy.
Yeah, where they buried him in ice up to his neck and
yeah, he's crazy.
So there you go. He's a superhero.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Teaching everybody else to be a superhero? I don't think so.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta go. But to talk to you again. I hope this was useful for you, and keep kicking butt on your clinicals, man.
I appreciate it.
I'll see you.